The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Hundreds of representatives from different alien species filled the circular chamber, their worried whispers echoing off the metallic walls. At the center of the room, a hologram showed a growing red sphere, a stellar anomaly that threatened to destroy dozens of inhabited star systems. Council leader Marcus, an 8-foot-tall warrior from a race known for their battle prowess, stood at the main platform. His scaled skin reflected the red glow of the emergency lights, and his deep voice carried across the chamber. The anomaly grows stronger each day. We have lost contact with 3 outer colonies already. In the middle section of the chamber, the human representative Tom Miller sat quietly, taking notes on his tablet. Unlike the other representatives who wore ceremonial armor or displayed their battle scars with pride, he wore a simple black suit with the Earth insignia. The other races often mocked humans for their excessive safety protocols and what they saw as cowardice. Humans were the only species that required multiple backup systems on their ships, insisted on lengthy safety checks, and preferred to retreat and replan rather than charge into danger. A reptilian warrior stood up, his metals clinking. "Then let us gather our bravest warriors. We will fly into the anomaly and destroy it." Many representatives roared in agreement, pounding their appendages on their desks. Tom sighed and looked at his datapad. The numbers were clear. This wasn't a problem that could be solved with bravery alone. The anomaly's energy readings were off the charts, and its behavior didn't match any known natural phenomenon. Council leader Marcus raised his hand for silence. "The anomaly's radiation levels are unlike anything we've encountered. We need a volunteer crew to study it up close before we can act. Who will step forward for this noble mission?" The chamber fell silent. Even the proudest warrior races hesitated. The data showed that any ship approaching the anomaly would face temperatures hot enough to melt standard hull plating and radiation levels that could kill most species in minutes. Tom looked at his readings again and pressed a button on his desk. A small blue light indicated his request to speak. "The human wishes to address the council," Marcus announced, unable to hide the surprise in his voice. Tom stood up, his movements calm and measured. "Earth will volunteer a research vessel and crew for this mission." Laughter erupted across the chamber. A warrior diplomat from a silicon-based species shouted, "Will you study it from a safe distance of 10 solar systems away?" Tom continued, unfazed. "We have been developing specialized shielding and monitoring systems for exactly this type of situation. Our ship, the Precaution, can get closer to the anomaly than any other vessel in the galaxy. Because you built it like a floating fortress," someone shouted. "With backup systems for your backup systems." "Yes," Tom replied simply. "That's exactly why we'll survive long enough to gather the data we need." The laughter died down as his words sank in. Council leader Marcus leaned forward. "You would risk human lives for this mission." "We have already assembled a volunteer crew. Captain James of the Precaution and 11 other specialists are ready to launch within 48 hours. All of them have families. All of them know the risks. And all of them have trained for years to handle exactly this type of situation." A murmur ran through the chamber. The human approach to danger had always confused the other races. They didn't charge in fearlessly. Instead, they studied, prepared, and planned for every possible disaster. Marcus looked around the chamber. "Are there any other volunteers?" Silence answered him. "Very well," Marcus declared. "The human vessel Precaution will lead this mission. May your excessive preparation serve you well." As Tom left the chamber, he heard the whispers behind him. The other races couldn't understand why humans would volunteer for such a dangerous mission. They didn't realize that courage wasn't about being fearless. It was about being afraid and doing what needed to be done anyway. And sometimes, the bravest thing wasn't charging in with guns blazing, but taking the time to understand the threat and prepare accordingly. He smiled slightly as he contacted Captain James. The Precaution was ready. Its triple-layered radiation shielding, redundant life support systems, and backup power cores, all the things other races mocked as excessive, were about to prove their worth. The time had come for humanity's cowardice to save the galaxy. The Precaution sat in its docking bay like a giant metal turtle. Unlike the sleek warships of other races, its hull was thick and layered, covered in sensors and emergency pods. Captain James walked through its corridors, checking each station one final time before launch. Shield test number 15 complete, reported Engineer Pete from his station. His fingers moved across 3 different control panels, each one monitoring a separate layer of the ship's defenses. All readings normal. A group of alien observers stood at the back of the bridge, watching with mixed expressions of boredom and disgust. They had been sent by the Galactic Council to observe the launch preparations. "This is your 5th shield test today," complained one of the observers, his metallic skin gleaming under the ship's lights. "Your cowardice delays the mission with each passing hour." Captain James didn't look up from his checklist. "Better delayed than dead," he said calmly. It was an old human saying that had never translated well to other species. In the engine room, lead engineer Mary was running her team through another series of drills. "Main power fails. What do you do?" "Switch to backup power unit 1, answered Tech Officer John. "Backup 1 fails. Switch to backup 2 while beginning emergency repairs on main power. Both backups fail. Emergency solar cells deploy automatically. Use manual override to activate reserve battery systems. Begin immediate repairs on main power and both backups." Mary nodded, making notes on her tablet. The alien observers shook their heads in disbelief. 3 power systems, solar cells, reserve batteries. One of them stepped forward. "Our ships have one powerful reactor. When it fails, we die with honor." "We prefer to live with preparation," Mary replied, continuing her checks. The aliens didn't understand that every backup system on the Precaution existed because something had gone wrong in humanity's past. Every safety protocol was written in someone's blood. In the medical bay, Dr. Allen was triple-checking his supplies. The walls were lined with radiation treatment pods, another feature unique to human ships. Other races considered them a waste of space. "Final equipment check," he announced to his medical team. "Radiation suits. 3 sets per crew member," came the response. "Emergency rations. 6 months' worth in 5 different storage locations. Backup medical computers. All 4 systems online and synchronized." The alien observers had heard enough. Their leader, a tall warrior named Rex, stepped forward to address Captain James. "Your species claims to be brave, yet you waste time checking systems you will likely never need. Our warriors would have launched hours ago." Captain James finally looked up from his work. "Tell me, Rex, how many ships have tried to study dangerous anomalies in your people's history?" 17 mighty vessels. Their crews died gloriously in the attempt. "And how many succeeded in their missions?" Rex fell silent. "We've launched 43 similar research missions in Earth's history," James continued. 41 ships returned. The 2 we lost taught us lessons that saved hundreds of lives later. Those backup systems you mock, each one exists because we learned its necessity the hard way." The captain turned to his crew. "Final pre-launch checks. Everyone, report in." One by one, each station reported their status. Engineers confirmed multiple backup systems were running. Medical Bay reported all emergency equipment was ready. The science team verified their sensors were calibrated and their backup sensors were standing by. The alien observers watched in confusion as the humans methodically worked through their launch preparations. They couldn't understand why a species so focused on safety would volunteer for such a dangerous mission. "Launch countdown beginning," announced Captain James. "Remember, everyone, we're not here to die gloriously. We're here to succeed cautiously." As the engines hummed to life, the alien observers left the ship, shaking their heads. They still didn't understand that humanity's greatest strength wasn't fearlessness. It was the wisdom to respect danger and prepare for it. The precaution systems came online one by one, each with its backups standing by. As the ship lifted off, Captain James looked at his crew. They were afraid. Only a fool wouldn't be. But they were ready. Their cowardly preparation would keep them alive long enough to do what needed to be done. The real test was about to begin. The Precaution moved slowly through space, its thick hull reflecting the red glow of the approaching anomaly. Captain James stood at the main viewport, watching as the strange phenomenon grew larger. It looked like a dying star, but its energy patterns were unlike anything they had seen before. Distance to anomaly: 50,000 kilometers, reported Navigator Mike from his station. All sensors are active and recording. The bridge crew worked quietly at their stations, each focused on their tasks. Unlike the warships of other races, which would have charged straight toward the threat, the Precaution moved forward in careful steps, gathering data at each point. Energy readings are much higher than expected. Science Officer Lisa announced, her eyes fixed on her screens. The Council's estimates were off by at least 300%. Captain James nodded. Good thing we didn't trust their data. Shield status: all 3 layers holding strong. Engineer Pete replied. The extra radiation plating is already proving its worth. Any other ship would be cooking right now. A warning light flashed on one of the monitors. Unknown energy spike detected. Lisa called out. Something's changing in the anomaly's core. All stop, ordered Captain James. The Precaution came to a halt, holding its position as the crew studied the new development. On any other ship, this would have been seen as cowardice. But the human crew knew better. Rushing in without understanding could kill them all. Look at these readings, Lisa said, putting the data on the main screen. The energy patterns. They're not random. There's a pattern here. Before anyone could respond, a massive wave of radiation burst from the anomaly. The ship's automatic systems detected it first, and the outer shield layer activated a fraction of a second before impact. The bridge lights flickered as energy washed over the ship. Warning alarms blared. Outer shield holding. Pete shouted over the noise. Radiation levels in safe zone. Thank God for paranoid engineering. Second energy wave incoming. Lisa warned. This one's stronger. Captain James pressed a button on his chair. All hands, brace for impact and prepare for emergency protocols. The second wave hit harder than the first. The outer shield crackled with energy, and several systems sparked. Outer shield down to 40%, Pete reported, switching to backup power systems for shield regeneration. Second and third shield layers still at full strength. Any other ship would be space dust right now, Mike said quietly. The crew watched their instruments as the wave passed. The backup systems they had tested so carefully were now keeping them alive. Each safety measure, each redundant system that other races had mocked, proved its worth. New data coming in, Lisa announced, her voice excited despite the danger. Captain, you need to see this. The energy waves, they're not natural. They have a clear pattern, almost like what? Like a machine. Lisa put the analysis on the main screen. These aren't random stellar events. They're more like pulses, regular controlled pulses that have gone wrong somehow. Captain James studied the data. If Lisa was right, this changed everything. They weren't dealing with a natural disaster. They were dealing with technology. Ancient, powerful, and malfunctioning technology. Send this data to the Council immediately, he ordered. Use all 3 backup communication systems. We need to make sure this gets through. As the crew worked to transmit their findings, Captain James looked out at the anomaly again. Its red glow seemed different now, less like a natural disaster and more like a warning light on a broken machine. Your orders, Captain, Mike asked. James took a deep breath. The safe choice would be to retreat now, to take their data back to the Council. But sometimes, being careful meant taking calculated risks. We'll hold position and gather more data, he decided. But first, run a full system check. I want to know exactly what those waves did to our ship. The crew nodded and got to work. They were afraid. Only fools wouldn't be. But their fear made them careful. Their caution kept them alive. And now, thanks to their careful approach, they had discovered something no warrior race would have lived long enough to see. The real mystery of the anomaly was just beginning to unfold. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Council appeared as a hologram on the Precaution's main screen. The chamber was in chaos as alien representatives argued over the human crew's discovery. "Impossible," shouted a warrior race delegate. "The humans are too afraid to get close enough for reliable readings." Science officer Lisa stepped forward, her voice calm but firm. "Our readings are accurate. The anomaly is artificial. A machine built thousands of years ago. Its original purpose was to prevent solar flares, protecting the nearby systems." The council chamber erupted in shouts again. Captain James watched from his command chair, noting how the warrior races immediately called for the machine's destruction. "We must gather our fleets," one called out. "We will destroy this threat with our combined firepower." "No," Captain James said firmly. The chamber fell silent at his interruption. "Our scans show that destroying the machine would trigger an immediate chain reaction. It would instantly destroy every system it was meant to protect." The alien representatives stared at the human captain in disbelief. Council leader Marcus leaned forward in his seat. "Explain." Engineer Pete stepped into view of the hologram. On his screen, complex diagrams showed the machine's energy flows. "The device is like a dam holding back a river of solar energy. If we break the dam, everything behind it dies. We need to repair it, not destroy it." "Repair it?" A reptilian warrior laughed. "More human cowardice. Better to die fighting than waste time with careful repairs." Captain James pressed a button, showing new sensor readings to the council. "Watch this recording carefully." The hologram displayed an energy pulse from the machine. As it fired, Lisa's instruments tracked its path. "Each pulse is trying to stabilize nearby stars," she explained. "But the machine is damaged. Instead of preventing solar flares, it's causing them. The pulses are getting stronger. In less than a week, they'll be deadly to every inhabited world in range." The council chamber grew quiet as the implications sank in. "How close are you to the machine?" Council leader Marcus asked. "Closer than any ship could survive without our shields," James replied. "We've identified what looks like an entry point, probably used for maintenance by whoever built this thing. We can reach it, but it will be dangerous." "Then retreat," several alien representatives shouted. "Send in warrior ships to destroy it." "And kill billions," Lisa countered. "The machine's power source is connected to every star in this sector. Destroying it would trigger simultaneous solar flares in all of them. No evacuation would be fast enough." "So you propose repairs?" Marcus asked, his tone skeptical. "Yes." Captain James stood up. "We've studied the machine's patterns. We have a plan. But we'll need the council's permission to proceed." The warrior races erupted in protests again. Their solutions always involved fighting, destroying, proving their bravery through combat. The idea of carefully repairing an ancient device seemed cowardly to them. "The humans run scans while billions are at risk," one shouted. "They hide behind their shields while danger grows." "We're not hiding," Engineer Pete said firmly. "We're learning. Every scan teaches us more about the machine. Every reading brings us closer to fixing it." "And if you fail?" Marcus asked. "Then we'll die trying to save lives, not trying to prove our courage," James replied. "We've mapped the safest approach to the entry point. We've studied the radiation patterns. We have 3 different repair plans and backup equipment for each." Lisa added, "Our caution keeps us alive long enough to help. Would you rather we died bravely, but uselessly?" The council chamber fell into debate. The warrior races argued for immediate action, for glorious battle against the machine. But as they argued, the Precaution's crew continued their work, studying, planning, preparing. Finally, Marcus raised his hand for silence. The Council grants permission for the human repair attempt. But know this, if you fail, if your caution and preparation prove worthless, we will destroy the machine regardless of the cost. Captain James nodded. Understood. We'll begin our approach to the entry point in 1 hour, after we complete our final equipment checks. As the Council transmission ended, James looked at his crew. They were about to attempt something no one had done in thousands of years: repair an alien machine that could destroy entire solar systems. They were afraid, but they were ready. The Precaution hovered near the ancient machine's entry point, its shields glowing bright against the intense radiation. Inside the ship's main meeting room, Captain James looked at the faces of his crew. The time had come for their hardest decision. "The entry point is worse than we thought," Engineer Pete said, pointing to the hologram floating above the table. "The radiation levels there are 4 times higher than anywhere else. Our suits can only handle 30 minutes of exposure, at most." Science Officer Lisa nodded grimly. "And it will take at least 20 minutes to reach the main control center, based on these scans. That leaves 10 minutes to figure out an alien machine and fix it," Dr. Allen added. He looked at his medical readings. "Even with our best radiation suits, the repair team will need immediate treatment when they return." "If they return," hung unspoken in the air. The ship's communication system crackled. Captain James, Council Leader Marcus's voice boomed through the speakers. "The warrior fleets are assembled. If you wish to retreat, we stand ready to destroy the machine." James pressed the reply button. "And kill billions of people in the resulting solar flares. A glorious sacrifice to save the rest of the galaxy," a warrior race commander shouted in the background. Captain James muted the transmission and looked at his crew. "You all know the options. We can retreat now, let the warrior races destroy the machine, and watch as entire systems die in the explosion. Or we can try to repair it. The safest choice is to retreat," Navigator Mike said quietly. "The warrior races are wrong about a lot of things, but they're right about one thing. This repair mission might be suicide." "Since when do humans take the safest choice?" Engineer Pete asked. "We take the smartest choice." "There's a difference." Lisa stood up and walked to the hologram. "Look at these energy readings again. The machine isn't completely broken. It's trying to do its job, protecting these systems from solar flares. It's just doing it wrong." "Can we fix it in 10 minutes?" James asked. "Maybe." Lisa pointed to several spots in the hologram. "I've identified what look like control panels. If they're anything like human designs, they'll have safety systems, reset protocols. The builders of this machine weren't careless. They would have planned for repairs." The crew fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts. They had families back home. Children, parents, loved ones waiting for their return. The warrior races would call their hesitation cowardice, but the humans knew better. True courage wasn't about rushing in blindly. It was about facing fear with clear eyes and careful plans. Captain James stood up. "I need volunteers for the repair team. 3 people. I'll be one of them." "I'm going," Lisa said immediately. "Nobody else understands the readings like I do." "You'll need an engineer," Pete added. "I've memorized every detail of those control panels." "The rest of us will monitor from the ship," Dr. Allen said. "The medical bay will be ready the instant you return." "If we return," James said quietly. "When you return," Mike corrected firmly. "Because unlike those warrior races out there, we're going to do this right. We're going to be careful, we're going to follow our safety protocols, and we're going to succeed." James nodded and pressed the communication button again. "Council Leader Marcus, this is Captain James. We've made our decision." "You're retreating?" a warrior race commander asked hopefully. "No, we're going to repair the machine. But we'll do it our way, carefully, safely, and with every possible preparation." The Council's response was a mixture of disbelief and mockery. The warrior races couldn't understand why anyone would choose a careful repair over a glorious battle. "You have 1 hour," Marcus said finally. "After that, the fleet attacks, with or without your permission." James looked at his repair team. "Then we better get started. Full equipment check. Triple check the radiation suits. Review the approach path one more time. We do this right, or we don't do it at all." As the crew moved to prepare, James gazed out at the massive machine. They were about to attempt something incredibly dangerous, but they would face that danger with preparation, planning, and care. Sometimes, the bravest choice was also the most careful one. The airlock hissed open into space. Captain James led his 3-person team toward the ancient machine's entry point, their magnetic boots making soft clicking sounds with each step. The massive device loomed before them, its surface pulsing with dangerous energy. 28 minutes of suit power remaining, Engineer Pete reported through the radio. His voice was steady, despite the fear they all felt. "Remember the plan," James said as they walked. "No heroes, no risks, no mistakes. We do this exactly as we practiced." Lisa moved her scanner across the entry point's surface. "Radiation levels are even higher than our last reading. Suits are holding, but we need to hurry." The entry point was a dark rectangle in the machine's outer shell, barely large enough for 1 person at a time. James went first, his helmet lights cutting through the darkness. The others followed, each watching their suit readings carefully. 25 minutes remaining, Pete announced. Inside, they found a narrow corridor lined with strange symbols. Lisa's translator worked quickly, comparing them to known ancient languages. "Left at the next junction," she said. "The control room should be 50 meters ahead." They moved carefully but quickly, checking each step. Other races would have run, trying to beat the clock. The humans walked, knowing that a single slip could kill them all. "Strange energy spike ahead," Lisa warned, checking her scanner. Everyone stop. The corridor in front of them flickered with purple light. As they watched, a surge of energy passed through, powerful enough to make their suit sensors scream warnings. "The safe path we mapped is gone," Pete said. "These energy surges weren't here during our scans." 19 minutes left, Lisa added quietly. James looked at his team. The warrior races would charge through, trusting their strength and courage. But that would be suicide. "Pete, check the walls for maintenance tunnels. Lisa, scan for any gaps in the energy pattern. There's always another way." They worked quickly, their training taking over. Pete found a panel that opened into a narrow service tunnel. Lisa confirmed it was free of energy surges. "It's tight," Pete said. "We'll have to crawl." "Better slow than dead," James replied. "Single file. Watch your suit seals." The tunnel was a tight squeeze. They could hear their suit fabric scraping against the metal walls. But they moved steadily, following their sensors and maps. "Control room ahead," Lisa reported. "But we've used up more time than planned. Only 12 minutes of suit power remaining." They emerged into a circular room filled with ancient control panels. Strange lights pulsed across the surfaces, matching the machine's failing rhythms. "Lisa, start translating. Pete, find us power connections. I'll watch our backs," James ordered. They moved to their tasks without wasting a second. This was what humans did best: careful, coordinated teamwork under pressure. 9 minutes, Pete reported, connecting his diagnostic tools to a panel. Lisa's fingers flew across her translator. "I've got it. These aren't just control panels. They're maintenance interfaces. The builders left repair protocols." 7 minutes, Pete warned. "The machine's core programming is intact," Lisa continued. "It's trying to prevent solar flares, but its timing system is corrupted. It's firing pulses at the wrong moments." "Can we fix it?" James asked. "Yes, there's a reset sequence." But Lisa hesitated. "Someone needs to stay at this panel while 2 others activate different stations. The timing has to be perfect." 4 minutes of suit power, Pete said quietly. James looked at his team. 3 panels, 3 people, 4 minutes left. The warrior races would call this the perfect time for a heroic sacrifice. The humans saw it differently. We do this together, James said firmly. Lisa, guide us through it. Pete, watch the power levels. I'll take the far panel. Quick, careful, and right. They moved to their stations. Lisa called out instructions, each person double-checking their actions. No heroics, no wild gambles, just precise, careful work even as their suit warnings began to flash. Final sequence in 3, 2, 1. Now. They pressed their controls in perfect sync. The machine hummed deeply. The pulsing lights steadied, changed from red to blue. It's working, Lisa shouted. The timing is stabilizing. 2 minutes of suit power, Pete reported. We need to move. Now. Together, James ordered. Back through the maintenance tunnel. Quick but careful. They moved as one, their training and preparation carrying them through even as exhaustion and fear tried to take hold. The machine behind them hummed with healthy energy, its ancient purpose restored not by bravery or battle, but by careful, skilled human hands. The medical bay of the Precaution buzzed with activity. Captain James, Lisa, and Pete lay in radiation treatment pods while Dr. Allen checked their readings. Outside the ship's windows, the ancient machine glowed with a steady, healthy blue light. The radiation exposure was exactly as calculated. Dr. Allen reported to the waiting council through the ship's communication system. Thanks to our suits and quick timing, everyone will make a full recovery. Council leader Marcus's voice filled the room. And the machine. Lisa spoke up from her pod, her voice tired but proud. Working perfectly. It's back to its original programming, preventing solar flares instead of causing them. The nearby systems are already showing signs of stabilization. On the main screen, they could see the warrior fleet still waiting at a safe distance. The alien commanders had expected to witness either a glorious sacrifice or a cowardly retreat. Instead, they had seen something entirely different. Victory through careful planning and teamwork. Impossible, one of the warrior commanders muttered. They succeeded without a single casualty. Without any battles. That's kind of the point, Pete said from his pod. We plan ahead specifically so we don't have casualties. The council chamber fell silent as new data began flowing in. The machine's energy patterns had completely stabilized. Nearby stars were returning to normal. Billions of lives were no longer in danger. The council requests your mission logs, Marcus said finally. We wish to study your methods. James smiled weakly from his pod. All our logs, procedures, and safety protocols are already prepared for transmission, including notes on what we could have done better. This brought confused murmurs from the council. Done better? A warrior race representative asked. You succeeded. Yes, James replied. But we also learned ways to improve. Our suits could have had better radiation shielding. We could have mapped the maintenance tunnels earlier. Next time, we'll be even better prepared. Next time, several council members asked simultaneously. Of course, Lisa's voice was stronger now as the treatment began to work. This can't be the only ancient machine out there. There might be others, and they might need repairs too. We should start preparing now, not wait for another crisis. The council chamber erupted in discussion. The very idea of preparing for problems that didn't yet exist seemed strange to the warrior races, yet they couldn't deny the results. A week later, the Precautions crew stood in the actual council chamber, fully recovered. Captain James addressed the assembled representatives. We've prepared detailed reports on everything we learned, he said, not just about the machine, but about our methods, our safety protocols, our backup plans. They're available to any species that wants them. You would share your cautious ways? A warrior commander asked, struggling with the concept. Knowledge shared is knowledge multiplied, Lisa replied. The universe is too dangerous for any of us to face it alone. To everyone's surprise, several warrior race representatives stepped forward to request the human protocols. They had seen something they'd never expected. Victory achieved not through fearless combat, but through careful preparation and respect for danger. Perhaps, Council Leader Marcus said thoughtfully, "We have misunderstood human nature. We saw your caution as cowardice, your preparation as weakness. We were wrong." "There's something the warrior races need to understand," James said. "Humans aren't fearless. We're afraid all the time. Of failure, of death, of the unknown. But we don't let fear stop us. We let it guide us. Fear is why we prepare. Fear is why we plan. Fear is why we survive and succeed," Pete added with a smile. In the months that followed, things began to change throughout the galaxy. Warrior races started adding backup systems to their ships. Safety protocols became common practice. The human way of careful preparation spread, not because it was forced, but because it worked. The ancient machine continued its quiet work, protecting billions of lives. It stood as a monument not to glorious battle, but to the quiet courage of facing dangerous problems with patience, wisdom, and care. And on Earth, a new saying began to spread through the space fleet. Courage isn't about not being afraid. Courage is about being afraid, being careful, and doing what needs to be done anyway. The humans had proven that sometimes the most courageous act wasn't charging into danger. It was taking the time to face danger intelligently. And that was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.